Florida has always had its legends: mangroves, manatees, the mighty Everglades, skunk ape, even Florida man. But one legend faded from our shores nearly a century ago: the wild pink flamingo. And yet, somehow, flamingos never really left Florida, at least not from our imaginations. They're practically the unofficial state mascot. You're going to see them on beach towels, pool floats, neon bar signs, postcards, and of course that giant pink bird on the Florida Lottery logo. They're everywhere, except strangely in the wild. And for most Floridians, the only flamingos we've ever seen are the plastic ones on somebody's front lawn, slowly fading from pink to expired shrimp beige under the hot Florida sun. But what if I told you that the real ones, the wild shrimp-eating, knee-bending originals, might finally be coming back? And this time not in the form of tacky suburban decor and pool floats. But first, let's hop in the Wayback Machine and rewind just a little bit. Back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, wild flamingos were a regular part of Florida's coastal wetlands. Explorers described flocks feeding in Florida Bay, the Keys, and even up near Tampa Bay. But in the early 1900s, those flocks had mostly vanished, and that was thanks mostly to us. Hunters wiped them out for their feathers because back in the day, plume hunting was a big thing, and no lady's fancy hat was complete without a little bird murder. We wiped out lots of birds, and we drained much of the Everglades to build farms and towns. And after that, flamingos in Florida had faded more into folklore. The only ones most people saw were the captive kind, living props at classic tourist attractions like Hialeah Park, Parrot Jungle in Miami, Sarasota Jungle Gardens, Busch Gardens in Tampa, and Sunken Gardens in St. Pete. These parks made flamingos part of the state's tropical image: pink, graceful, quirky, and really photogenic. And for decades, they kept the illusion alive that flamingos were still native here, even when the wild ones were long gone. But let's fast forward to today, and the story's getting weird again, but in a pretty good way. In August of 2023, Hurricane Idalia tore through the Gulf and carried hundreds of flamingos from the Yucatan and Cuba all the way up here to Florida. And it sounds pretty crazy, but this actually happens a lot more than you'd think. Hurricanes can scoop up migrating birds, trapping them in the calm eye, where they just kind of go along for the ride. And this time, those hitchhikers rode the winds straight to Florida's Gulf Coast. And they landed everywhere from the Keys to the Panhandle, with shocked locals spotting wild flamingos in St. Petersburg, Clearwater, and even along Tampa Bay.
Floridians are seeing a whole lot of flamingos after Hurricane Idalia. Sightings happen across Florida, including Treasure Island Beach and St. Pete Beach.
For once, we didn't mind the out-of-state arrivals, and for a little while, those plastic lawn flamingos had some real competition. Many of these birds did leave after the storm, but some of them actually stuck around. Meanwhile, decades of Everglades restoration have made these wetlands livable again. The salinity is balancing, the water is flowing, and the buffet is starting to reopen for these crustacean-loving birds. According to Audubon, Florida, and the U.S. Geological Survey, restoration projects are finally restoring natural freshwater flow into Florida Bay, and that is exactly the kind of habitat that flamingos need. And because flamingo populations in the Caribbean are recovering, there are more wandering up this way to test out some new territory. So Florida is suddenly starting to look a little bit pinker and a lot more promising for these birds. And hey, quick pause before we go a little bit deeper. If you love Florida stories like this, from its wild past to its weirder present, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps more people find these videos and lets me keep chasing down stories about the hidden, forgotten, and flamingo-colored corners of the Sunshine State. So, is it really happening? Are flamingos starting to show up in Florida again? Actually, yeah, and the numbers are kind of backing that up. In February of 2024, Audubon, Florida ran its first ever statewide flamingo survey. 40 volunteer observers found 101 wild flamingos across the state, 50 in Florida Bay, 18 near Pine Island, and 14 up at Merritt Island. Then in July of 2025, a record-breaking 125 flamingos were spotted in Florida Bay, the largest group seen in decades. And in case you wondered, a group of flamingos is called a flamboyance. which honestly sounds like the name of an 80s glam band to me, maybe touring with Flock of Seagulls. Remember them? But even cooler, some flamingos have been hanging around for months. They're returning to the same areas season after season, something they only do when they find a place they like. And yeah, we probably all know this one, flamingos aren't born pink. It's probably the most overused zoo trivia fact in history, right up there with elephants are the only mammals that can't jump. But it's true, they turn pink from eating shrimp and algae full of beta-carotene, the same pigment that makes carrots orange. Eat enough of that stuff and you might start looking a little presidential yourself. But let's not get too excited too soon. This isn't a guaranteed comeback story, at least not yet. So far, there hasn't been any confirmed nesting witnessed in Florida. So until baby flamingos start being raised here, scientists can't officially call them a native population again. Just some visitors from the Caribbean. And flamingos, they're pretty picky. They need stable, shallow, salty water, not too deep, not too fresh, not too chaotic. If you sneeze too loudly near them, you're going to scare them off and they're going to change zip codes on you. Add in some ongoing problems here like water pollution, development pressure, and noisy jet skis, and Florida is still a pretty tough neighborhood for these birds. So why does any of this even matter? Well, because flamingos are kind of like a feathery litmus test for Florida's ecosystems. If they're thriving, it means the Everglades are recovering. It means the balance between fresh and salt water is starting to look right again. And besides the ecology, flamingos are cultural icons. We love these birds. There's even been a push to make them Florida's official state bird, which I gotta say, I'm pretty much on board with. The mockingbird, pretty boring. And Florida's a pretty interesting state. I think we need an interesting, iconic bird, so I am on Team Flamingo all the way to make that one the state bird. And seeing flamingos return would be both poetic and practical, a symbol that the Sunshine State's wild side isn't just surviving, it's healing and thriving. But the next big step, nesting. If scientists can spot some flamingo chicks in Florida, that means the comeback is starting to look official. Then comes migration tracking, genetic testing, and long-term monitoring to see if these birds are just visiting here or building a home here. If the data shows self-sustaining populations, we can finally say it. Florida flamingos are back. So next time you're out near the coast and think you spot one, grab your camera, report it to Audubon, and celebrate the fact that maybe, just maybe, the wild flamingo is finally home again. And if you want to keep exploring Florida with me, from the theme parks to the state parks, please hit like, please hit subscribe. I've got lots more cool Florida content coming. Until the next one, please stay safe out there, and I'll see you around the Sunshine State.